If someone had told me this story, I would have sworn they were lying. That it was all made up, some wild exaggeration from a person with way too much imagination and free time. But no, this happened to me. And even now, as I write it down, it still feels unreal. My name is Daniela. I'm 38. I live in Mato Grosso, Brazil. And for many years, I truly believed I had a stable family. Not perfect, but stable. I met Julio when I was Arshar. He was 24, fresh out of college, starting what looked like a promising career as a physical therapist. He was sweet, polite, helpful, the kind of guy all my friends would call husband material, and honestly, he really seemed like it. We got married after 2 years of dating. Our first child was born right after the wedding, and the second came 3 years later. We built a life together from scratch. We worked hard. We went through tough patches like any couple, but never, not once, did it cross my mind that he could cheat on me. And definitely not in the way it all went down. Julio and his father Ronaldo were always close. More like best friends than father and son. They talked every single day, texted constantly, and even went on trips together, just the two of them. I thought it was sweet, honestly. I admired that bond, especially because I never had anything like that with my own dad. My father-in-law was different. Reserved, methodical, too polished for a small-town man. A widower since his early 40s, he lived alone and rarely got involved with anyone. Whenever I asked him about dating, he'd brush it off, saying he'd already lived everything he needed and all he wanted now was peace. As the years went by though, little things started bothering me. Julio would get nervous if I so much as touched his phone, even if it was just to play a song. He'd say it was about work, clients, patients, that he didn't like people invading his privacy, and I respected that. I trusted him. But quietly, I started paying more attention to the weird schedules, to the deleted messages, to those work trips where, by coincidence, he'd end up meeting his dad. It all started feeling off. I ignored it, and that's where I messed up. There's one weekend I'll never forget. We were getting ready to go to a kid's birthday party, and out of nowhere, he said he had to stop by his dad's place to pick up a book. Weird, right? It was a Saturday afternoon. He was already dressed and ready to leave, but I didn't argue. I just asked him not to take too long. He left and didn't come back for almost an hour. When he finally showed up, he didn't even have the book. I asked and he just said he forgot. But he was acting strange, tense. My stomach dropped. I didn't know why, but something inside me whispered, something's wrong. That night, he turned his back to me in bed, and when I reached for him, he pushed me away. Left me frustrated, suspicious, and with a knot in my chest that hasn't gone away since. A few nights later, his phone started buzzing over and over in the middle of the night. He was in the shower. I normally don't snoop, but something in me snapped. I grabbed it. It wasn't a text, it was an email notification. A thread between him and his dad, and what I read was the beginning of my personal hell. Phrases like, "We need to be more careful. I don't want to hide anymore. I love you, but I can't keep lying." I froze. My hands went cold. My brain just stopped working. I read that message 10 times, hoping to find another explanation, convincing myself it was some misunderstanding. But it wasn't. My husband was having an affair with his own father. I was still holding the phone when he walked out of the shower. The moment he saw me with it, he went pale. He tried to snatch it from me, but I wouldn't let go. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. The only words that came out of my mouth were, "Are you cheating on me with your dad?" He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, silent. Then he lowered his head, and in a whisper that shattered me into pieces, he said, "Yes." My mind spun. Since when? How long had this been going on? How was this even possible? Julio didn't deny it, didn't even try. He sat down on the edge of the bed, buried his face in his hands, and stayed silent for what felt like forever. Meanwhile, all I could hear in my head was the same line over and over again. My husband cheated on me with his father. And then came the blow that made everything worse. "He's not my biological father," Julio said. "I was adopted when I was a kid. I never told anyone." That hit me like a truck. I had no idea. In all our years of marriage, he had never once mentioned it. As far as I knew, as far as everyone knew, Ronaldo was his real father. But he wasn't. Julio had been adopted at 8 years old, after bouncing between foster homes and a messy childhood. Ronaldo and his wife, who at the time couldn't have kids, took him in. They raised him like he was theirs. At least, that's what everyone believed. Looking back, the bond between them had always been off. Too much, but no one ever dared to say anything. Ronaldo was overly protective, involved in everything, crossing lines that didn't belong to him. When we bought our house, he wasn't just the guarantor. He picked the neighborhood, gave his opinion on the floor plan, even influenced our decisions. When our boys were born, he bought all the nursery furniture without even asking us. I thought it was controlling, but Julio would always say it was gratitude, that he owed him everything, that Ronaldo had saved him from a miserable life. But after that night, it all clicked differently. Julio confessed that things had started back when he was still a teenager, that boundaries in that house were blurry, confusing, that Ronaldo had always been too affectionate, too close, that conversations that should have been between father and son carried a strange undertone. And by the time he was 15, Julio already understood that the affection wasn't just paternal. According to Julio, his mother, the woman I had always heard spoken of with respect when suspected something, she caught a strange conversation, saw some messages, noticed weird gestures between the two of them. She even confronted her husband, but he denied it all, said she was crazy, that she was imagining things. She tried talking to Julio, but he was just a teenager. He denied everything, told her she was paranoid, that she was making it all up in her head. Not long after that, she got sick, cancer. It was fast and brutal. Within a year she was gone. And after that, it was just the two of them in that house, alone, no one else around. Julio moved in with me not long after. We started dating, and everything seemed normal. But now I understand that relationship never actually ended. This wasn't just an affair. It was an unresolved story, buried under the rug for years. And now it was crashing back into my life like an avalanche. Julio told me he had tried to break free, that he fought against it for years, that marrying me was his way of trying to change his life, to build something different. But he never managed to cut the cord. Every visit, every trip, every message with Ronaldo was like striking a match rekindling, something that had never really died. He cried as he confessed all this. I couldn't. I was numb. With every word, my head spun, my stomach turned. It felt like everything I knew about my life was a lie. Nothing made sense anymore. The man I had slept next to for years, had children with, shared bills, vacations, and dreams with, was the same man hiding a relationship with his adoptive father. And the most shocking part, he spoke with a kind of relief, like he was finally setting down a weight he'd carried for too long, like he was free. While I was stuck asking the only question that mattered. Why? Why marry me? Why build a family when his heart had never left that house? Why use me as a shield to hide a sick, twisted love? And most of all, why now? The next morning he was gone. Just like that. When I woke up, his clothes were gone from the closet, toothbrush, documents, phone, everything. No note, no message, no warning. He just disappeared. The house was dead silent. It was early. The kids were still asleep. I walked to the closet, saw the drawers open and empty, and I knew right away he had run. I didn't cry. Not right then. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I didn't know what to do. I called his phone off. I texted him, no reply. Tried calling Ronaldo. Nothing. No answer. That same day, I sent the kids to my sister's place. Told her I needed some time. I couldn't even look at them properly. Deep down, I knew that sooner or later they'd ask where their dad was. And I had no answer. I didn't even believe it myself. I stayed home, alone, in complete silence, for 3 days. I barely ate. I didn't leave the house for anything. Took one shower. The only time I got up was to use the bathroom. At night, I'd just stare at the ceiling. During the day, I avoided mirrors. I was destroyed. I looked like a stranger to myself. And the worst part wasn't just the betrayal, it was who he betrayed me with. His own father. That made everything feel dirtier, harder to even process. On the 4th day, my sister called me on video. The boys missed me. She pushed me to talk to them. I tried, forced a smile, but it was fake. My oldest looked at me and asked, "Where's Dad?" I froze. My sister quickly jumped in, said he was away on a work trip. Then she hung up, probably realizing I couldn't handle it. That afternoon, I drove to Ronaldo's house. I needed to see him face to face. I needed to hear it from him. But the place was empty. A neighbor recognized me and came over. Told me they'd both left the day before. They went to Snow Paulo, rented an apartment, said they're moving in together. I thanked him, turned around and left. No scene, no drama, just drove home slowly. No music, no calls, nothing. I walked in, sat down on the couch, and stared at the wall for over an hour. I couldn't do anything. The days that followed were worse. My phone started buzzing with messages, people asking if it was true. Some shocked, some mocking. A coworker even sent me a screenshot of a post in a Facebook group. The rumor was everywhere. Man leaves wife to live with his own father. That's what my life had been reduced to, online gossip. Then school called me in. My oldest son had gotten into a fight. Another kid mocked him, said his dad was gay, and ran off with his grandpa. My boy punched him in the face. I was called to the office. The principal looked at me with pity. I just wanted to disappear. I apologized. Took him home. On the way back, he asked me if it was true. I told him we'd talk later. I still didn't have the strength to say it out loud. I took a week off work. My boss was understanding. Told me to take care of myself. I went back to therapy. Started writing in a notebook every day just to get the thoughts out, to try to make sense of the chaos. A few days later, I got an email from Julio, a long one. He said he regretted everything that he ran because he couldn't face it, that he didn't know how to handle the fallout. He said he wanted to keep contact because of the kids. I read it once, deleted it, didn't reply. He made his choice. I'm not giving him space in my life anymore. I was still broken, still hurting. But at least now, I finally knew who I was really dealing with. And maybe that was the beginning of something new. The next day, I got a call from the boys' school. My oldest had wet his pants during class. He said he needed to go but didn't dare stand up and ask. The principal told me he'd been quiet, avoiding the other kids. When she asked him what was wrong, he just lowered his head and walked out of the room. I apologized and set up a meeting with his teachers. They promised to help, because they could see I wasn't capable of handling it alone. I called my sister, asked her to stay with the kids for a few days, because I couldn't even get out of bed. She said this was bigger than just sadness, that maybe I needed medical help. So I went to the clinic. They gave me a referral to a psychiatrist, and I started taking mild anxiety meds. I had never felt so broken in my life. Every breath felt like a battle. Work held up for a while, but once the deadlines came back around, I had to ask for an extension. My boss said he understood and gave me a month off. I took it. At home, I wandered through the rooms like they didn't even belong to me. Weeks went by without me caring about the house, dirty dishes piling up, clothes scattered everywhere, lights left on, food spoiling in the fridge. I only slept in the mornings, passed out on the couch. The only thing I managed to do was shower once a day. At night, I'd put on pajamas and crawl back onto the sofa. It was one of the darkest phases of my life, but the day I finally managed to sleep without medication, I knew something had to change. I couldn't live in chaos anymore. So I broke the silence in the house, with new smells, opened the windows, cleaned everything, swapped the curtains, bought a small washing machine to keep up with the laundry, set up labeled bins to organize the kids' toys and school supplies. I made grocery lists, cleaning schedules, and to-do lists. I started cooking simple, homemade meals, again nutritious. Nothing fancy, but real food. Slowly, orders started replacing the emptiness. Every little action gave me a tiny breath of life back, and little by little, I started recognizing myself again. With that came responsibility. I filed for full custody earlier than planned. I knew it would still need both parties' authorization, but I wanted to at least secure stability for my kids. It wasn't about symbolism, it was practical. My lawyer said we could try to fast-track it, given the urgency of the situation. I've never been the type to drag anyone into court, but now I understood I had to fight. I started making calls to the bank, switched the credit cards into my name, canceled his, reset all the passwords, cold bureaucratic things. But I needed it. Every little change wasn't just fixing the house, it was fixing me. Then I went back to work. Just part-time, but still I went back. Some coworkers hugged me, others avoided me. My mom reached out to me. Lucky for her, she lives far away. She called and said she could tell I was doing better, just from my voice, and asked if she could come see the kids. I'll admit, my first instinct was to say no. But the pediatrician had already suggested family contact, story time, stability. So I agreed. She showed up the next day with a box of old toys she'd kept from her own kids, my siblings. She stayed, helped around the house. That routine pulled me back into something bigger than the pain. It pulled me back into their childhood, into life itself. I know now that her help was essential in getting me back on my feet. My mom was never the type to say I love you out loud. She was always about actions. And honestly, that means more to me than pretty words. That's what made the difference. She didn't wait. She came. She held the bridge while I was rebuilding myself. There was no debt between us anymore, no guilt, just partnership, real support, no sugarcoating. And that's when I learned something. Rebuilding isn't just about crying. It's about making decisions, putting things back in order. Having someone who truly shows up, not just talks about it. Having my mom by my side gave me time, gave me ground to stand on. And that's how I plan to keep moving forward. With her, with my kids, building our home and our life again. As the weeks passed, the house found its balance. My mom and I split tasks naturally. Mondays, she picked the boys up. Tuesdays, I did. Wednesdays, she cooked dinner and took them to the park. Thursdays, I went to therapy. Fridays, she stayed with them while I organized the house. The rhythm worked. It gave me a structure I hadn't had when everything collapsed. At home, my ex never set foot inside again. My name was the only one on the papers now, thanks to the legal process we started. He and Ronaldo stayed wherever they'd decided to live. People in town started greeting me on the street. Good morning. I admire what you're doing for your kids. And that helped me reclaim my self-worth, not through pity, but through respect. Almost 9 months later, I got a WhatsApp message from Julio. He wanted to reconnect with the kids. I asked for time. I scheduled with the child psychologist to talk to them before I gave any answer. The next day, they told me how they felt. My oldest said, "Mom, he never called me before. Now he wants to show up and act like everything's fine." My youngest cried and said, "He forgot about me." Right then, I decided, no meeting would happen unless they asked for it. At the next parent-teacher conference, Julio showed up. I kept my distance. He lingered by the door. When the kids saw him, they pulled back. On the way out, he came up to me and said, "Can we talk about visitation?" And I answered, calmly, "First I'll talk to them. Then I'll talk to you." He nodded, quiet, sad, contained. With the psychologist, I explained to the boys that their dad was asking to see them. I asked if they wanted to. My oldest answered firmly, "No, you can't see people who disappear for months." The youngest nodded in agreement. They stood by their decision, and I could see the relief in them because they had decided together. He tried again, sending a Lego set. I returned it unopened. He said it was a gesture of reconciliation. I checked with my lawyer, kept it in the box, and had it sent back to the sender. The kids approved. "Dad doesn't understand us." Then his mother reached out, sending messages. "He cares." I politely asked her not to get involved. Told her straight, "We've already talked. This is between me and my kids, not you." She backed off after that, no reaction. It made things clear I didn't need mediators. After that, he tried every trick to get close again. Even sent flowers, thinking it would somehow give him access to the kids. But no, I never gave him an opening. Then he went further, filed for custody. That caught me off guard. The court ruling gave me full custody, with visits only if the kids requested them, and always supervised. He appealed, but my lawyer and the psychologist were ready. In court, I made it clear. This wasn't revenge. It was about protecting the emotional stability we were still rebuilding. I didn't even need to hold back tears. I spoke firmly, clearly. I don't know if one day the boys will want him back in their lives. But if they do, I'll respect their choice. At home, my mom decided to return to her town last week. I missed her deeply at first, but before leaving, she handed me a notebook. Inside, she'd written down routines we'd built together, reminders for the boys, little notes from friends, and even sweet, childlike drawings. Her last practical gesture before heading home. I'll be close by. Call, and I'll come. Now it's me and my kids, and every honest routine we're building together. Almost a year later, I found out that my ex-husband is officially with his own father. Not a rumor confirmed by his coworkers and family friends. Someone even sent me a discreet photo, the two of them holding hands at a concert. When I saw it, I thought about telling the boys. Thought about saying, "Your dad is officially in a relationship with his father." But I held back. What good would it do? It doesn't change who we are, or who we're becoming. And then I remembered my last session with the psychologist. She hugged me and said, "They don't need to know everything, just enough to live balanced lives. Life goes on." The boys keep up with their activities: soccer, tutoring, school. When I asked if they were curious about their dad being with their grandfather, my oldest simply said no. Then he added, "That's his life, Mom, we're fine." And my youngest agreed with a calm smile. That was the confirmation I needed. They had reframed the present. They weren't tied to what was happening out there. Of course, the memories are still there. The weight of the trauma from those men who were once part of my life is still there. But now there are filters, boundaries. For so long, I considered them family. I thought my father-in-law deserved my trust. I believed my husband was my emotional anchor. But I've learned something. No one is mandatory in your life. Family, husband, father-in-law, those are choices, theirs. And my choice now is to make it crystal clear, yes, I'm moving forward alone with my kids. With the people who truly love me standing by my side. With the life I've chosen, not the one that was forced on me. Because without them, I can finally dedicate myself to the life I built. The life I chose, and teach my children that dignity is never a burden. It's a choice.